and gentlemen, honorable judge, and respected members of the House. I firmly believe that expecting children to care for their aging parents places an undue burden on them and is no longer a fair or sustainable model in modern society. Now, what is the characterization of parents raising their children? Is it because they want to be taken care in the future? No, it is because they want their children to succeed. But making the children take care of their parents doesn't really fulfill the purpose. Rather than putting up an expectation, it's better to let the children choose whether they want to help their parents or not. Defining the phrase able children, it means children who are physically, emotionally, financially, mentally able to help, regardless of how much of a burden it may place on them, aiding their parents. Also, expectations mean social expectations that put great pressure on a child, almost forcing them to do something. Our world should look like a world that excludes social obligations and pressure that are put on children and rather promotes voluntary assistance for the elderly by the children. Now, first and foremost, the sacrifice a child will make. Three parts: the strain, sacrifice of autonomy, and geographical limits. The expectation of caregiving places an enormous emotional, physical, and financial strain on the children. While it is natural to feel a sense of duty to care for our parents, the reality is that balancing caregiving with a career, family, and personal well-being is overwhelming. Many students are forced to make significant sacrifices, reducing work hours, draining savings, or even giving up their careers altogether. This not only puts them under immense stress, but can also lead to a burnout, anxiety, or depression. Now, the emotional toll can further strain relationships, creating feelings of resentment and guilt, especially when the child are unable to meet the expectations placed upon them. Beyond personal impact, the responsibility for elder care is often unfairly placed on individual families because of a lack of adequate social support systems. In many societies, the financial and logistical challenges of caregiving fall to children, often without the necessary resources or infrastructure to manage such responsibilities. This creates an imbalance where children bear a disproportionate financial burden. Rather, we need to invest in public systems such as affordable healthcare, professional caregiving services, and well-funded elder care programs that can ease this responsibility and ensure that
Bye.
elderly individuals receive proper care without relying solely on family members. Furthermore, this expectation infringes upon a child's personal autonomy. In today's world where individuals are expected to
What?
pursue careers, no thank you, raise families, and achieve personal goals, forcing children to prioritize caregiving can limit their ability to live independently and fulfill their own aspirations. Autonomy is a core value in modern society, and we should not undermine it by demanding that children abandon their personal growth to meet familial obligations. Now, we must also address the changing family structures. Children frequently live in different cities or countries than their parents, and the notion of caregiving as a responsibility that involves daily hands-on care is increasingly impractical. Now, the expectation that children should simply drop everything to take care for their parents, even when separated by distance, ignores the realities of modern life. Now, we must also recognize the rise of generational imbalance, where one generation is expected to always care for the previous one, creates significant pressures. With the aging population living longer than ever before, elderly parents often require care for an extended period, sometimes stretching into decades. This places a disproportionate amount of responsibility on children, especially when caregiving can span many years. At what point does a child who may be trying to care for their own family or build a career become expected to sacrifice their life to meet the needs of elderly parents? This imbalance disrupts the ability of younger generations to fulfill their own aspirations, raise their own families, or contribute meaningfully to society. Again, we must also consider the broader cultural shift towards individualism. In many societies today, personal autonomy and self-fulfillment are prioritized. As a result, the traditional expectation that children care for elderly parents often clashes with modern realities. While this shift does not mean that abandoning family responsibility, it does suggest that caregiving should be a shared, flexible responsibility, not one solely placed on children. In an individualistic society, people seek to carve their own paths, pursue their own dreams, and live independently. The idea that children must prioritize the needs of their elderly parents over their dreams and aspirations creates a tension that is increasingly difficult to
What?
reconcile in modern life. No, thank you. Out of order. What does this mean? It means that putting expectations and pressure on children will force them to give up good portions of their lives, which not only fails to match the purpose of the parent raising their children, but also disrupts the younger generation's ability to fulfill their aspirations and creates conflict. Instead, such caregiving must be only made when children are ready and able to handle the sacrifices. Because of these reasons, I'm so
PM
proud to
started
propose.
Top's case with a massive contradiction and a major dumpy logic with no analysis at all. Look, PM contextualized this motion by saying that able children are children who are able financially, mentally, and physically. But look PM's biggest excuse. Children will be overwhelmed and depressed. Look, if the children are able, financially and mentally, your case how they're going to be depressed because they're overwhelmed doesn't make any sense. We did not get any explanation and analysis from PM. Their biggest harm already falls in the beginning of my speech. Moving on to a few pieces of setup. One, on the context of the motion. So proposition's burden is twofold. A, to prove why the culture of putting some expectations on able children to take care of their elderly parents is bad and unjustified culture, despite how parents have invested and sacrificed so much in the children's lives. B, how regretting this culture contributes positively to a better family dynamic between parents and children. We think that they failed to provide you with a decent and comprehensive analysis on both burdens. Opposition will prove two things. A, why in principle able children have responsibility to contribute to take care of their parents, and B, why taking care of their parents actually will result in a better family dynamic. Two, before I go deeper, a few clarifications, because PM didn't really contextualize this motion properly. By able, children who are financially, physically, and mentally capable to contribute in taking care of their parents, which means that we're talking about middle to upper class children who will have some degree of savings, have stable jobs, and also have a support system. This means that most likely they won't easily get burdened because they also have to leave at their job. They have support systems as well. This rebutted they have support systems at home. So this already rebutted their whole harms. We also wanted to clarify that, of course, we are talking about relatively healthy families here, and really toxic parents who abuse their kids, for example, won't be the subject of this debate because we agree it won't be fair for the kids. By relatively healthy family, we mean, of course, parents and children would fight and have some conflicts, but eventually they will be resolved. Thirdly, what does it mean to take care of them? Because proposition completely characterized a worst case scenario. This does not mean that they are going to stay with them at home 24/7, but it means that they are going to look out for them, like contributing financially based on the children's capacity or visiting them a couple times a month, accompanying parents to hospitals when needed as well. If they live geographically far from their parents, they should call their parents and can also pay for medical bills, for example. The motion doesn't say they have to live with their parents 24/7, but just take care of them. And because these children are able, we can assume they have the full capacity to do this. And at the end of the PM speech, they literally made a contradiction in the motion by saying that only able children should be the ones taking care of their parents, which is literally what the motion is saying, hence they're actually supporting our side. Now moving on to my two arguments in my speech then. Firstly, how it is in line with giving back to their parents, and secondly, how it fosters a healthy family cycle. Moving on to my first argument. For some context, all the success that these children have is essentially because of these parents' investments and time spent on them. Hence, it should be at least some moral obligation to take care of them because they are the reason that we were able to succeed in the first place. We are saying that children have the obligation because one, this is the whole idea how we give back. On our side, we are not going to expect people to dedicate all their time to them. But in principle, the investment that our parents made is the reason for our success. And parents have already cared for us already. Hence why it should be children's turn to take care of them, especially since they have the capacity to do so. Why shouldn't they? Morally, it's their obligation. Secondly, my second argument then. When there is an expectation from a young age, these children grow up into developing intrinsic values. Hence, they are naturally brought up to thinking that caring for their family is essential. This cycle reinforces the idea that family is about caring for the whole society, not just for yourself. Structural reasonings that one, better family dynamics. It will also affect the individual of the kid as well. Because if your family is essentially all happy and you have a good relationship with them, then you will also feel happy. But if your parents are toxic and you're in a toxic environment, you can't focus and your mood will obviously go down. And secondly, these children feel fulfilled. While caregiving is often framed as a responsibility, it is also a fulfilling experience, especially to their parents who they love and care for a lot. And this is why I'm so proud to
Guilty
oppose.
because of
Thank
their
you.
unjustified expectations that society brings. As soon as they give pressure and widens the gap between ables and not ables, this shows the structural failures of a state, further making inequality happen in society. By our policy, we could find out who truly wants to take care for their parents, and that is true love. Opposition makes meaningless standards, opposition making meaningless standards makes fake care happen to parents, which does not represent true love at the end. Caring is not absolute, and the purpose of parents raising their children is not to receive a payback to what they have done in the past, but because they want their children to succeed. That's why parents send us to academies or school or good environments. We're the only side that could truly identify the meaning of parental purpose, and the only side that could find out true love. Therefore, still a clear prop outlet. Three things in my speech. First level, some clarifications. Second level, some rebuttal. Last but not least, last constructive argument. Some clarifications then. I think a parental purpose of raising a child is not about how they should later receive the same treatment and live a happy life, but actually the true meaning of a parent when raising their children is to help them live a happy life in the future. That is why we get sent to great schools, great education system, and that is why we get to that is why we get to debate right now, and that is why we're able to live such a happier life in Korea. Parents are not malicious like opposition claims. Therefore, we outright reject all of the characterization of parents because of the purpose of a parent wasn't true love, but then wanting a payback as to what they have done for the kids. But why
You know
wouldn't they
what?
get better care from the government? Since they love us and since they care for us, that is why they make meals for us every day, and that is why that is why they never gave up on us. But moving on to some rebuttals. Ella totally misunderstands our point about depression. The reason why individuals have depression is because they don't meet the standards of physically, mentally, etc., etc. Therefore, Therefore, that is why they feel depressed or overwhelmed because of the harsh expectations that they have gone through, that society bring as a whole. Second of all, we never said that able kids should only support their parents, but we should erase the expectation and give them freedom. If you love your parent and you truly have if you love your parent and if you want to help your parent, you truly have the individual freedom to help your parent. That's why we don't keep strict standards and we give no depression and we don't make individuals feel overwhelmed at the end, but like those. But then moving on to our final argument as to how this creates inequality and widens the gap. But for any of that, I'll take that POI. 3,
Okay,
2.
so you said that we're talking about that we will foster inequality, but we already clarified this for the upper middle class who do have the capacity, and the motion already says they have the capacity, so please engage.
Yeah, I know that the people who have capacity are able to take care, but the problem is that you're giving meaningless expectations for people who are not able to do it because for example, if your peer friends or your friends are if your friends are able to like take care of your take care for their parents, but you're the only one. This still gives pressure to an individual, and these stakeholders should also be integrated in today's debate. That's why your POI also falls. But moving on to our final argument as to how this creates inequality and widens the gap. The premise here is that individuals who are able will be the only ones to actually take care of their parent, and then the unable ones are never going to be the ones to be the ones actually taking care of their parents in the future. I think then this would create two likely harms that are very harmful and crucial to note in this round. First of all, this creates social deprivation to the unable ones because they think that there are kids that are not successful and a child that couldn't take care of their parents. The impact here is that social deprivation often creates overworking because they quickly want to get out of the unable. But at the end of the day, they're just a hamster running around a treadmill. Both sides need to agree that it's really difficult for us to get out of unable because, for example, if you're like unable physically, no matter how hard you try, there will be social deprivation. How hard you try, it will be unable for you to save your parent. That's why the response that this is also an extra response for the POI that Elo states. There's so much inequality there's so much inequality for unables one also. But therefore, we create a society where both parents and children become happy, thus through properly.
On top of my speech, I wanted to point out a major strategic mistake done by two speakers from Proposition. Firstly, clearly the Proposition is debating in a worst-case scenario. DPM mentioned that children who are not able to take care of their parents will feel burdened and eventually depressed because of the burden. Panels, this shows that Proposition did not even engage to the reality of this motion. This motion clearly stated that able children, so expectation that society places is on able children. So the expectation that is placed upon able and unable children is different. Moreover, they didn't give you any analysis and connection why unable children will feel burdened. No analysis, just assertion. You shouldn't count it. Children who are not able to take care of their parents logically understand they will not be able to do it. Proposition fosters a highly individualistic society where children forget their duty and responsibility. The proposition suggests that the societal expectation for children to care for their elderly parents is a burden and an outdated tradition that should be rethought. Panels, we believe that the expectation to care for aging parents is not a regretful imposition, but a natural, moral, and vital responsibility that forms the cornerstone of strong family and cohesive societies. Moving on to my first clash, they said that children will have to sacrifice their life. Families, by their very nature, are built on the idea of mutual care. Children grow up in a system where their parents sacrifice a significant amount of their well-being financially, emotionally, and physically. To suggest that it is unfair or unreasonable to expect children to take care for their elderly parents fails to acknowledge that this is simply a natural part of the family cycle. In fact, family support systems are designed to provide the necessary help during times of vulnerability, including aging. While caregiving can be challenging, it is often incredibly rewarding and a time for family members to grow closer, understand one another, and appreciate the full arc of the relationship. Children often feel a sense of purpose and gratitude when taking care of their parents, which can counterbalance the perceived pressure. Furthermore, technology has also made it easier to provide care remotely in more manageable chunks. Telemedicine, caregiver apps, and smart home devices help manage the care of elderly parents in ways that are less intrusive and physically demanding for children. The modern caregiving landscape is not the same as it once was, and society has adapted to help families shoulder this responsibility. Propositions has to engage to our case and stop giving one-liner buzzword like depression, overwhelmed, and burden. Next, they also said that it doesn't represent true love. Making caregiving an expectation doesn't negate true love. It reflects the deep bonds of responsibility and that naturally exist within families. Expectations often serve as a framework to guide behavior, and fulfilling them can still be an act of genuine love. Just as parents are expected to care for their children, yet do so out of love. Children meeting the expectation to take care of their parents reflects gratitude and respect, not a lack of sincerity. Now, moving on to my extension. In most cultures, families are not just seen as biological units, but also as social foundations that help perpetuate shared values, beliefs, and customs across generations. When children are expected to care for elderly parents, it reinforces a broader social understanding that family is a shared responsibility, not just for individuals, but for the collective well-being of society. Care strengthens family bonds by fostering respect and understanding between younger and older generations. It encourages children to learn from their parents' wisdoms and experiences, which helps build a stronger sense of family identity. In many communities, elderly parents are not seen as a burden but as respected figures whose life experience is valued. This reinforces a culture of respect and solidarity, where the elderly are not discarded or forgotten but honored and cared for within the family unit. A child has been took care by their parents for their entire life, and once they are old enough to take care of themselves, their parents are getting too old to take care of themselves. It should be the child's duty, it should be the child's responsibility to be able to take care of their parents. By maintaining this expectation, societies ensure that the elderly are cared for in a way that preserves their dignity and places value on the family relationships. It also fosters a culture of care that transcends individual families and enriches society as a whole, making it a more compassionate, stable, and connected place for everyone. With all that I have stated, this is why I am so proud to
It's
oppose.
not
Thank
about
you.
whether caring for their parents is important, but whether putting burden on individuals is unfair and whether it's beneficial for them. So we're not the evil side who is encouraging children to abandon their parents, but we are simply having a rational stance, making the best choice that is possible. So no one in this debate can create a perfect world, but we're only advocating for the better world that is possible, and we're the side that is actually having a rational stance and a rational argument. So moving on to my first clash, which will be our expectations to take care of their parents are an unfair burden to children. So even though it's obvious, I would like to explain how that expectation pressures and forces all of the children, even the one who is financial disadvantaged and who is not able to help their parents effectively. So when there's an expectation, it assumes some kind of action as a moral responsibility, a moral thing to do. Whether it is true or not, expectation in this motion gives a message to children that not taking care of their parents is being immoral and being a bad person. And this kind of message pressures every child, even if they are financially disadvantaged. Because why? Firstly, they want to be a moral person, and secondly, they don't want to be a person who just give excuses and get out of responsibility. And three, they don't want to be a person who is not unable to help their parents, not the person who is financially disadvantaged. So because of this reason, they are clearly pressured and fairly precious. So for the responses to the opposition, they talk about moral obligation of children because parents cared for them. However, parents cared for children cared for their parents when they were young. Parents
parents cared for their children when they were younger, wanting the child to have happy life and succeed, not wanting to be paid back. If children are denying the goals parents wanted in order to help them, and that is not paying back their parents, even if we say opposition logic is correct. So I would like to explain reason why it is unfair. Firstly, it is harming yourself in order to help others, and this is meaningless and a foolish thing to do for individuals. So individuals get harmed and get sacrifices. So for example, not having full time to have a not spending a full time with your families and your child that you make in the future, and maybe abandoning your careers, your own values, and what you wanted to do. And secondly, it is pressuring individuals to unfairly sacrifice themselves in their is unjustified. No, thank you. And their value might be career or their families that they want to have, but they are sacrificing their own values. So yes, individuals might not take care about individuals in our worst case as the opposition states, but we trade off that because it would be not damaging the children themselves, which is not what the parents or what parents want also. So moving on to my second clash, which will be which that can create a better world when it comes to taking care of parents. So if we compare the two words, our world, if according to the opposition's logic, children would naturally want to help their parents. So we will also have care by free volunteering of the children. The key differences would be individuals will sacrifice themselves and know the proportionate line to keep what they should sacrifice and what they should not. So it actually gives meaning to the care because it is not being forced and giving emotional care. However, on the opposite side, even if they have more people caring about their parents, they would lose meaning because one, they're being forced, so it is accepted as something obligation, and it is something it is things like homework to do. And secondly, even if the ones who is already taking the care, they would be anxious because they would think they need to show the others that they are taking care of their parents, so they want to show an objective standard, things like using money. So emotional care and emotional support would turn into just spending their money because because of the individuals think that is what the society wants. No, thank you. That is what the society expecting them to do. And if we compare to this, okay, we might have less people who is taking care of the parents, but we actually have the people who is taking the real care for their parents, having emotional support, not just sending money to the parents and not being on their side. So therefore, I'm so proud to
Panel's
propose.
proposition has clearly lost this debate when the third speaker literally flipped their entire stance. Look, third speaker mentioned that we are not saying taking care of parents is not important. Look, their first speaker literally said that the children should not have the responsibility to take care of their parents because the children's life and career is more important, which means the first agrees with the principle of what this motion is about, whether taking care of your elderly parents is important. What is your actual principle, team proposition? The conclusion is clear. 3 speeches down the line, we have not heard any significant case and analysis from third, and they did not engage to our case at all, which means our case is still standing. Proposition's case rests on oversimplifications and neglects the nuanced realities of family dynamics and societal responsibilities. As the third speaker for the opposition, I'll show you why their argument fails to stand in this debate, and I'll reinforce our stance that caregiving is a shared responsibility shaped by moral values, love, and practical realities. A clarification that we have to make is that we have clearly stated that the proposition's arguments are all relying on a world where supporting parents means dedicating time, money, resources, and everything to the elderly parents. However, in our world, we have already clarified that supporting does not mean that you have to be with them 24/7. And I'll expand and give more examples on my rebuttals later. 2 contributions in my speech today. I'll answer the question on whether children have a moral obligation to care for their parents in their old age, and I'll deal with the issue of whether this responsibility places an unfair burden on the children. My first clash about responsibility. Their points is that it's not the children's responsibility. Supporting one's parents is not merely a burden. It offers emotional and psychological benefits for children as well. Acts of caregiving fosters empathy, strengthen family ties, and allow children to feel a sense of fulfillment in giving back to the people who nurtured them. It's not just about duty, it's about the joy of maintaining a connection and honoring the sacrifices parents made. When children take care of their parents, it reinforces an idea in their mind about how family is a shared responsibility for the whole of the household. And while it may not be a legal responsibility, the emotional and moral responsibility to care for parents is deeply tied to principles of gratitude, mutual support, and family unity. Dismissing this responsibility risks weakening family bonds and undermining a cornerstone of human compassion. Panels, keep in mind that supporting your parents can be in many different ways, like giving them money / financial aid, even when you don't see them, or just seeing them when you have nothing to do. Seeing them even once a year is still a form of supporting them. It's not like supporting parents means you have to be there all the time and live with them, but supporting can come in many different ways. Another point they said was that making children take care of their parents makes children not succeed. However, taking care of parents does not inherently prevent children from succeeding. Instead, it teaches invaluable life skills and like empathy, time management, and responsibility, qualities that are essential for the long-term success in any field. History and countless real-life examples show that individuals can balance familial responsibilities with personal achievements. Moreover, caring for parents often inspires resilience and a sense of purpose, which can actually drive success rather than hinder it. My second clash is about the well-being of the child. They said that there are no benefits for the children. However, note that the benefit for the children is that when they take care of their parents, they will feel happy too and fulfilled because, like, oh, their family loves each other and their family is like one big happy family, which is one of the benefits. And also, they will learn the real value of family to teach the younger generations to respect their elders who have given so much for them and made them who they are today and gave them the opportunities that they had today. Another point that I would like to rebuttal is their point about the mental health of the child. Panels, we already stated that supporting does not mean giving up their whole life just to be a caretaker. No, but we said that supporting financial or even just FaceTiming them once every few months is also a way of supporting your parents, which can make all proposition arguments fall. In fact, caregiving can foster a sense of purpose, fulfillment, and stronger emotional bonds with their parents, which positively impacts mental well-being. Additionally, this burden can be mitigated by support systems such as siblings sharing responsibilities, government elder care programs, or community resources. Rather than being a purely negative experience, caregiving can teach resilience, empathy, and the value of family, which are crucial for emotional growth and long-term mental health stability. With all these things that I have stated, this is why it is clear Team Proposition has lost, and which is why I am very proud to.
Proposition's biggest strategic mistake is that they debate that in the worst case scenario where taking care of your parents is always overwhelming, that there's no possibility at all for adult and able children, which we have explained thoroughly in my first speaker speech, as children who are financially stable, have a support system, and also physically and mentally able to balance their responsibility as children who should contribute in taking care of their parents and living their life normally without being depressed and highly overwhelmed. At the very least thing, if Proposition wants to run the case that taking care of their parents is extremely burdening and overwhelming, they need to give you an analysis and connection to why the action of taking care of your parents is so taxing even though you're able to do so. You are in full capacity to do this. Proposition clearly did not fulfill their burden at all, that we have already clarified since the first speaker set up. Now moving on to strategic mistakes. So one, Proposition is at a worst case scenario the entire case. We cannot stress this enough, Judge. DPM's exact words were people who are not able to. When we have stated since the beginning that this motion is about middle upper class who have the capacity to do this in the first place. Them even talking about those who are financially disadvantaged is already such a giveaway that they are talking about the wrong actors. Secondly, they say that people will think taking care of their parents equal money. But we have clarified since the beginning that taking care of them doesn't just mean giving money, but spending time with them as well and visiting them. They clearly did not take this into account. Now moving on to my two clashes on firstly, which side is morally justified, and secondly, which side creates a better environment. So they told you that parents make meals not because they want something in return, but because they love you. This is not enough because one, no matter what these parents' intent is, they still have sacrificed at least 18 years of their life to take care of their children to the best of their ability. Morally, it's an obligation to at least give back a little bit when you clearly have the capacity to do so. Secondly, their analysis can go against them as well, because if parents make meals because of love, then we have the fiat to say that children can also take care of them because of their love. Like, does Proposition not realize that children care about their parents, especially if they set them up for success? And they also literally admitted in the whip speech that through this expectation, children will still want to morally care for their parents because of the pressure. Isn't that actually supporting our case that these children do have some moral obligation within them and they want to help their parents? That's why I'm so proud to oppose vote for op. Thank you.
Our whip didn't contest that taking care of parents is important and necessary. And even if this assertion is true, taking care and being important and being a child's responsibility is totally different. There are speakers throughout the whole debate continuously tell us, and the closing bench just falls down by closing bench closing bench speeches falls down by my speech because they can't just simply prove how child's responsibility and how it's being important is completely the same at the end of the day. And also, according to them, if taking care of parents is calling them once a month, not sacrificing themselves, then they cannot have an effective benefit because it means that it's okay for children to thinking care is such an easy thing to do. I think Seon did a good job on telling you why, regardless of expectation, that this still brings pressure for unable individuals. This creates an automatic standard for unables, also because of the fact that they'll be the only ones that are unavailable to take care of their parents. This is less worse under our side because we have better freedom that your side can't claim. The pressure and standard is less on our side because able kids who are only passionate enough to take care of the parent will be the only ones taking care of them. Since there is no expectations, unable individuals will think that, so even if I grow as able individuals, I don't need to feel pressure about always caring for my parent. That also erases the current depression that they own. This is what we meant for automatic standards or expectations, and they just simply misunderstand all of our argument and start to assert throughout their whole speeches. They just drop down. Also, they still ignore our point about parents' intentions being really different as to what they claim. Reply just brought out one-liner, so I'll engage. A parental intention when raising a child is not to receive a payback from you, your kid, while making your child succeed. This actively puts down all your speeches because your point are all under the premise that parents think that since I did good things for my kid, they should also do the same. Like, that's not status quo. If they were to think like that, they should rather receive free care from government, and this was consistently pushed from the opening bench, but they just don't engage. Calling them once a month is also possible when you have physical issues or financial issues. Therefore, the caring that they mentioned doesn't really match only to able kids, and therefore their benefit and caring they mentioned also falls down at the end of the day. Also, therefore, that giving back to a certain extent is also possible under our side, and therefore that's why we win this debate, and it's clear prop outlet. Thank you.